Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Jasmine, and on behalf of Harvard Bookstore, the Harvard University Division of Science, and the Harvard Library, I'm excited to introduce this event with Bruce Schneier, presenting his new book, A Hacker's Mind: How the Powerful Bend Society's Rules and How to Bend Them Back, in conversation with Hiawatha Bray. Tonight's event is a part of our Harvard Science Book Talk series, which works to bring the authors of recently published science literature to our Cambridge community and beyond. To learn more about this series and our other upcoming events, you can check out the page harvard.com/science. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a couple housekeeping items. First, just a quick reminder to please silence your cell phones for this event. Tonight's event will conclude with some time for your questions. Just raise your hand during the Q&A portion, and one of our event staff will bring you a microphone. And thank you so much for supporting our series by buying books from Harvard Bookstore. And thank you for our friends at Harvard for all of your help in making events like this possible. If you haven't picked up a copy of A Hacker's Mind yet, or if you would like to get your copy signed and personalized, we will be moving to Cabot Library just across the hallway right after this event for a signing and reception. Now, I am so pleased to introduce tonight's speakers. Bruce Schneier is an internationally renowned security technologist and the author of 14 books, including the New York Times bestseller Data and Goliath, as well as hundreds of articles, essays, and academic papers. He is a fellow at the Berkman Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University, a fellow at the Belfer Center at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, and a board member of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. He is also a special advisor to IBM Security and the Chief Technology Officer of Resilient. He is joined in conversation tonight by Hiawatha Bray, award-winning technology reporter and columnist for the Boston Globe. His writing has appeared in Wired, Fast Company, Black Enterprise, and Christianity Today magazines, and he has also worked at the Detroit Free Press. He's the author of You Are Here, A History of Modern Navigation, and the novel Power in the Blood. Tonight, our speakers are here to discuss Bruce Schneier's new book, A Hacker's Mind, a book that takes hacking out of the world of computing and uses it to analyze the systems that underpin our society. This book has already received fantastic reviews, including one from Harvard professor Steven Pinker, who writes that no one is better equipped than Bruce Schneier to explain how the often perverse use of human ingenuity can undermine the institutions that civilized life depends on. A Hacker's Mind is an important source of new insights on the forces that can sap the vigor and integrity of modern society. We're so pleased to host this event here at the Harvard Science Center tonight. Please join me in welcoming Bruce Schneier and Hiawatha Bray.
And that Pinker quote only cost me like 2 cocktails. It was great.
Okay, and we're off.
It's
Been a while since we've talked face-to-face. I call this guy all the time. He knows everything about
so he
this.
calls. He's been writing tech since forever.
Yeah, right.
He'll call and say, "Hi, I'm that annoying reporter again."
Yeah.
That
And I'm always true. It's always true. But I had a great time reading this really fascinating book, although I was sitting there puzzled a little bit about, well, the title, for one thing, A Hacker's Mind, because by the time I finished reading it, I sat there thinking, we all have a hacker's mind by your standard, because you describe in the book this incredible array of ways in which people, not just with technologies, but also with clever understandings of law, social customs, etc., find ways to route around various aspects of society's rules to get what they want. Right. And in a sense, we all have a hacker's mind in the way that you describe it in this book.
You know, we all do, although it's not uniformly distributed and it's not uniformly exercised. And I think hacking is a certain way of thinking about systems, thinking about subversion, thinking about taking advantage of systems. I think we all can do it. Mm-hmm. I write in the book that kids are natural hackers, just because, right, you know, they think outside the box because they don't know what the box is in a way that a lot of us are constrained by the box. So I'll give you, so I teach at the Harvard Kennedy School. I teach cybersecurity policy, and I have an exercise I do for the first class where I try to teach the hacker's mind. So I ask them, how would you steal lunch from the cafeteria? Actually, I start with how would you turn out the lights? So that's the first question. And, there's going to be 20, 30 ways that eventually involve, bombing the power station at the other end of Cambridge. Right? All of which work on how to turn out the lights. And then how would you steal lunch from the cafeteria? And we can do this. There are lots of ways. I mean, we can come up with 20 or 30, including, pull the fire alarm. How would you change your grades is another interesting question to start asking. And then at the end of the class, I say, well, there's going to be a surprise quiz in 2 days. You are expected to come in and write down the first 100 digits of pi from memory. That's the quiz. I know you can't memorize 100 digits of pi in 2 days, so I expect you to cheat. Do not get caught. I send them off, and they come back in 2 days, and we run the exercise, which is, and so that, the hacker's mind is coming up with clever ways to subvert the system here.
Of course. But everybody already does
But
that.
some are better and some are worse.
That's
And
true.
some naturally do this. I always have one student, one in every class, who can't bring themselves to cheat
Really?
and memorizes it.
Oh!
It turns out there's a song on YouTube. I didn't know this. Which is another hack, of course, because it's a memory hack. But so I think, yes, we all can be hackers. But the propensity to do it, the willingness, the creativity, I think that's something that is both innate in a distribution and is encouraged or not.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't know, I guess I have a different perspective on it. I think America is largely built by hackers, people who have hacked various systems, even if only to get here. People who have hacked various systems in order to basically survive here.
So I think that's right, it's 100% right. And then when someone does it, everyone else follows. So right, the hacker is the one who figured it out. I mean, and I think, yeah, a lot of those, and hacking is a way of innovation. It's a tough book because there's both good and bad hacks.
Of course.
We can talk about hacks as subversions. So I think of a hack as something the system permits, but is unintended or anticipated by its designers. So it's not breaking the rules. It's following the rules, but breaking their intent. So a tax loophole is an example I think we all can understand. Right? The law allows this, but it was never intended to. So it's legal. Might not be ethical, might not be moral, it's legal. And it's something that we look and say, I didn't know you could do that. Oh, I guess you can, uh-oh. And then we decide whether it's good or bad.
Wait a minute. Now, we often think of hacks, we think of people doing things that are breaking the system, if you will, like illegal attempts to...
Yeah, so that's not the term I
we're
use.
not going to be talking about that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's a good example. 1970s, Formula One racing. So there's a rule book run by an organization. They have a French name. I forget what they are. 1975, I think, some team shows up on the Formula One racetrack with a six-wheeled car. And everyone says, you can't have a six-wheeled car. What are you doing? And they pull out the rule book and say, well, show me. And it turns out the rules are silent on the number of wheels a car could have because no one imagined that you could show up with a six-wheeled car. And so then the Formula One racing organization amends the rules. And if you go to the rule book now, you'll see it says you could have no more than 4, or no less than, in case you get any ideas, 4 wheels on your car.
Is that what happened back in the 60s when that guy, Andy Granatelli, put a turbine-powered car?
There's all sorts of hacks. So you're looking at the rule book, that say you can't have any kind of enhanced steering, but maybe there's something they forgot. There have been extra pedals added. There have been flaps added to change airflow. Sports is full of hacks. Right? You've got a rule book, and winning is so important to look for the rules for something that no one thought of. He just died, I forget his name. In the high jump, he changed the sport.
Yeah,
Right? You remember his name? Right? That instead of jumping forward, you jump backwards, and you just got higher.
Was it Fosbury?
No, wasn't Fosbury the swimmer? No, Fosbury Flop, you're right.
Fosbury Flop. Was it
There was the swimmer in the backstroke who realized if he could stay underwater for like half the pool, going much faster.
I remember that.
Right, in basketball, dunking was originally a hack. It wasn't.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, I remember.
And it was declared illegal, but then the fans liked it. In hockey, curving your hockey stick. We know the name of the person who did it. It's in the book. and you curve your hockey stick, the puck goes much faster, gets air, more exciting sport, way more dangerous sport. But the rule book is silent on curving your hockey stick. And then the NHL said, we can't do that, and they changed the rules, and they've been modifying the amount of curvature over the years. So sports is a good place to find these hacks. I got a bunch of sports examples.
You briefly mentioned religion, too.
Religion is awesome for hacks.
No, the thing you mentioned was indulgences. And is indulgences a hack?
So it was.
Does everyone know what indulgences are?
So basically, an indulgence is a get-out-of-hell-free card. Right? So you can buy an indulgence before you sin. Right? So we reverse it. Now,
It's the carbon offset.
it kind of is. But for a church, donation is how you make money. You need money to survive. So selling indulgences was originally just a way to get donations. But it was quickly realized that this is like a limitless currency. You can print as many of these as you can. They were printing blank ones, and then there were middlemen, and they were reselling them. When Martin Luther starts complaining about the Catholic Church, this is it. This is what he's complaining about. That it turns into this basic, financial play that is no longer religious, no longer ethical. But that's just one. I mean, eating fish on Friday. So you go through the centuries and muskrats allowed in parts of the Midwest United States. It's not fish, but it's in the water. Sometimes geese are allowed because they swim. There's one edict that said you can eat fetal rabbit because it swims in its mother's milk.
Oh.
I'm going to tell you one I learned 2 days ago. It's not in the book. So in the 1400s, I might have that century wrong, in the Northern Europe, mostly Denmark, there was a spate of just random murders. So here is the problem. Here's the hack. You want to commit suicide. But according to your religion, if you commit suicide, you go straight to hell. And you believe that 100%. So what do? If you kill somebody, it's a capital crime. But you can confess to a priest before you're executed. So this is not a joke. This is a problem. People were killing babies, just random strangers, in order to get arrested and executed so they could end their life without going to hell. Totally a hack. And the only solution to this was eliminating capital punishment. It was the only way Denmark solved this.
Those Danes are some strange people.
Right, so this is an unintended consequence.
No, but what I'm thinking
rules.
is, but why only in Denmark? You are making a fascinating point. That should have worked everywhere.
So it did,
What is it with the Danes? Why are they doing this?
My guess is this is a word of mouth trick, and so there's no Reddit group telling you how to do this, so you've got to sort of hear about it. But it was happening everywhere, but it tended to be centered in Northern Europe, and I don't know why. I just saw this 2 days ago.
Got to be something to do with the weather.
I grew up
the long nights or something.
I'm Jewish, so lots of hacks in my religion. You can't carry anything, but you can put your key into a piece of jewelry, so it doesn't count. It's jewelry. You're not carrying. Right? The era of where you put a wire around your neighborhood, so it would count as a single home.
Really?
Oh yeah. Wow. Oh yeah. This is like. We are masters.
You've
kind of thing, right?
You've had more time to
We're
work
following the rules, but we're subverting it because it turns out God is easily fooled.
Well, in all fairness, Jesus complained about that a lot. Actually.
It's right.
He did. He made a big fuss about this.
And so did Martin Luther. So
yeah, right.
I guess the reformers get annoyed at this.
There you go. Okay. No, I wanted to ask you, the one that you mentioned that you only, 2 paragraphs, you talk about the Goldman Sachs aluminum hack,
This is super
which is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I still don't understand how it works. You put the aluminum bars on the truck, you drive them around, and you take them off the truck, and you make millions of dollars just moving them back and forth?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how this is also pretty. So a lot of these come out of finance. I mean, how can we subvert the rules? So this is where you'll get lots of tax hacks, loopholes. Hedge funds are full of different hacks. Like just ways the rules don't actually do what they're supposed to do. So this is something that Goldman Sachs figured out, that they could control the price of aluminum by basically moving it around warehouses and buying and selling it to entities they controlled.
Right.
And they had to actually do it. So there's aluminum on trucks driving around parts of the country, and it's being unloaded and it's being reloaded and driving around again, and it's totally artificial. And yeah, they made a fortune. Now
the question, of course, when you see something like that, or we'll also come to this whole thing of high-frequency trading, is you look at it and you go, they shouldn't allow that because it produces absolutely nothing of value to the economy. So why doesn't a regulator simply say, the only reason for you guys to do this is to game the system, and we just won't let you do it anymore?
And you know the answer, lobbying, right?
Yeah, because the people doing it are making millions doing it.
So if you, now the question is what happens, right? So a hack is discovered. It's a sports hack. It's driving aluminum around. It's a tax loophole. It's, some clever way to subvert some other Sabbath rule. And then people do it. It gets much more popular. And someone decides, is this legit or not? Right? So if it's a sports hack, there's some governing body.
Right.
There is that French agency that trumps Formula One racing. I don't know who does swimming and gymnastics, but there is some organization. If it's a casino hack, right, there is the casino. If it's a hack of Microsoft Windows, there's Microsoft. And that group gets to decide, should this be allowed or not?
Right.
Sometimes this is harder. If it's a legal hack, if it's a hack on aluminum trading or the tax code, Congress gets to decide. Now, how good is Congress at actually deciding things? Turns out they're not very good at it. Right? It takes them years. It is a process that is subject to a lot of different pressures. And this is one of my points in the book. We normally think of hacking as something a counterculture does. You think of a young male in a hoodie hacking into a big, powerful computer system. It's actually not the way it works. And that hacking tends to be done by the rich, by the powerful. Right? They are using their power to increase their power. And when they come up with a hack, they spend a lot of effort making sure it stays legal. Right? The carried interest loophole, which we all realize is a hack, we've been trying to close for 20-something years. And we just failed again last year, or earlier this year, last year. Because there is so much money and pressure to keep the loopholes open.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about the tax thing, the IRS doing our taxes for us, as opposed to making us go out and pay hundreds of dollars to have a company like
So we're like the only country where we have to do our own taxes. For most countries, the IRS already know, they've gotten your W-2s, they've gotten your 1099s, they have all the data. In most countries, the tax authority would send you a form, and you look at it, and you could sign it, you could edit it, you could tear it up and create a new one, you could do whatever you like, but they send you a draft, because they know your stuff. And we don't do that, primarily because Intuit doesn't let us. That is the reason. It's a no-brainer, but there is a very powerful lobbying entity that's making a lot of money off the fact that we don't do this. Now,
is that a hack in itself? Because we all know and it's the principle that you see in government regulation of every kind. The people who want something changed are relatively, unimportant and powerless and aren't focused on that constantly. Whereas the people who want things to stay the way they are, that's their living, and they just relentlessly keep after it.
So, I think of a hierarchy of hacking. And so here we are, that the hack here is the legislative process. Why is it that one company gets to decide? And that's not democracy. That makes no sense. But because of the way money in politics works in the United States, that can happen. So I think about, let's say you want to pay less tax. Right? You could find a tax loophole. That's one way, and then you could pay less tax. You can go up a level, and maybe you want to hack the IRS processes that determine how these rules are implemented. You go up another level, and you could hack the legislative process that determines what the rules are. You go up another level and hack the campaign, election, democracy process that elects the legislators, that creates the rules that get implemented in the tax code. Right? I mean, so you've got like Jeff Bezos up here buying the most expensive single-family home in D.C. because he's hacking away up here. Right? I mean, that's what money and power does. But you can play up and down the stack. Now that's harder in tech. Right? If I wanted to do a tech hack and I look at this computer code, I could, and I'm sure this is done, by most of my nation states. I can get an employee into Microsoft and implant my own vulnerabilities, or hack into the company. Like we see that. I mean, SolarWinds is an example of that. You hack into the company, put a vulnerability in an update, it gets distributed, right? But it's harder to move up and down that stack. In social systems, it tends to be easier. But if the rich find a loophole, it tends to stay legal. If all I don't know, flight attendants, food servers, if they find a loophole, it gets closed. I mean, you used to be able to deduct every load of laundry you did if you were in food service because you had to do laundry a lot. Well, now there's a limit.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How much can they?
I don't know what it is, but the poor don't get loopholes in the same way the rich do.
Yeah, I can believe that.
It's just not the same.
Right.
And of course, the amount of money you're saving here is in the hundreds of dollars. I mean, we have Peter Thiel, who took a Roth IRA, which was a 1980s, I think, 90s, I forget, tax law designed for middle-class taxpayers, and he was able to use a loophole in that to shield $8 billion with a B from tax forever. I mean, someone's got to say, I get it, but that wasn't designed for you. It's not the way it works.
I just want to throw this out because I don't think this is in your book, and to me, this is one of the more interesting things that I find concerning about all this. You were saying tech hacks are more difficult. I think that some of the controversies we see around social media and efforts to deal with the problem of misinformation raise a genuine risk that what we are seeing is almost a form of hacking, in that we are being told this or that piece of information is misinformation and not to be trusted. And it's a really open question whether this is truly misinformation or simply information that the government doesn't want us to take seriously.
Yeah, I mean, but it's there. Yeah, this is hard because there is. I mean,
there really is misinformation.
There really is misinformation.
Yes, right.
And I think of comparing. I mean, COVID misinformation.
Right.
With opioids. I mean, I know someone who he's in pain. He's prescribed opioids. He does his own research, realizes it's an enormous scam by the Sackler family, and says, I'm not going near that stuff. I don't care if you prescribe it. How do we? I mean, that's real different than the COVID vaccine, but we kind of fundamentally have an untrustworthy pharmaceutical industry.
Right.
So you can't blame people for not trusting the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem I'm getting at. We have this whole cycle of mistrust happening in American society, and people skeptical of what they're being told, which makes sense to a considerable extent. But when they publish this stuff and they go online and they post it, then you have this attempt to take the stuff that they are posting down because experts tell us that's misinformation. You can't. And
sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're wrong,
right, and sometimes they are flatly wrong.
So I talk about this, and my metaphor is getting a little fuzzy.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm the notion of a hack, something the system permits but is unintended and unanticipated by its designers. I talk about cognitive hacks. All right, so like no designer and what is the intent of a system. But we can kind of think of it. So I write about I've written for a year how terrorism hacks our systems of fear. Yes. Right? It is designed to make us overreact. Because it's random.
And it worked.
Because it worked. Because it happens against innocents. Because it's spectacular. Because it's rare. All the things that make us overestimate how dangerous it is. Right? So we fear plane crashes and not car crashes, which the data is completely opposite. And terrorism just hijacks that. But our systems of attention, of trust, of authority, these all were evolved for living in small family groups in the East African highlands 100,000 BC. That's what they're designed for. Well, the design's a crap word, but that's what they're intended. That's what they're for. That's what they're optimized for. There's a good word. 2023 Boston, like not so much. But it's a wholly different world. And a lot of those ways that our brains work can be manipulated. Mm-hmm. So Facebook does manipulate our systems of attention, and very profitably.
Yeah, and I've been reading the Twitter files, which haven't gotten as much attention as I think they deserve, and they seem to show pretty clearly that there are people in the government who have been persistently pressuring social media companies to say, you shouldn't tell people this stuff, even when they have no reason to believe that what they're telling people is false. It's just, this is our attempt, in effect, to hack social media by deciding what is approved information and what isn't. I don't think this is getting as much attention as it deserves because it really creeps me out.
Anyone watch the TikTok hearings? That's super creepy.
Yeah, right. And,
oh, wow.
Well, I didn't see all of it, but...
It was awful.
Yeah.
It was like, the Republicans were the Republicans, and it's like the Democrats finally find a social media company they can safely hate.
Yeah.
It's like, so nobody's making any sense.
But in passing, I've got to say that the idea of banning TikTok, I'm astonished that idea is gaining as much currency.
But it's never going to happen.
I hope not, because
we
the
can't
First
do it.
Amendment implications are
Right.
horrifying.
So, it would be illegal.
We would be doing what China does.
And we do not have China's censorship infrastructure. We actually cannot do what China does. We do not have the ability to do it.
Well, we could at the very least stop them from, taking it off the app stores or something.
Yeah, so we can do, and we do this. We can ban U.S. companies doing business with ByteDance. And we do that, with companies that are involved in terrorism.
Right.
And so that would mean it gets out of the app stores, right? The Google and Apple stores. U.S. companies can no longer advertise, and U.S. companies can't provide hosting. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean it's not available. It'll be available via the website. Anybody who wants to will be able to sideload it, and I guarantee you information on how to do that will spread through the youth community like wildfire. And the only thing changes is that everybody under 25 hates you. Mm-hmm. So but I don't think we're even gonna do that. This really feels like just fun demonization, and then they might make ByteDance sell it, and then it's hosted by Oracle, and they'll change nothing, and everyone gets to declare victory.
Well, the Chinese government has said they just won't have that. They're just basically saying, we will not stand by and let you force them to sell to
it's not being banned. It's not.
I hope not, because it's just...
And if it is, you're right, it will not survive First Amendment.
But I want to get you to talk about the upside of the joys of hacking. I mean,
all right, that's what I like doing.
I'm reading this, and I think about all the stuff that has happened in the world and that has happened in my own life, where everybody I know coming up as a kid was trying to figure out ways of hacking various government systems to make their lives better. And I can't help thinking that hacking is, for many people, particularly the less powerful people, something that we should regard with more admiration.
I think so, too. I have a lot of stories about COVID school hacking. So kids are great at this. So it turns out if you turn your screen off and change your username to connecting ... you don't have to pay attention anymore.
Oh, come on, but that's not a good thing.
But that's an awesome hack. I would totally give that student an A.
No, but that's...
So hacking is a form of innovation. Now, so we can look at, what are some regulatory hacks? We can look at Uber, full of regulatory hacks. Right? So, we could look at ways that is bad for workers, for gig workers. We could also look at a very old, moribund taxi industry that desperately needed to be updated. This was the only way it could be done because, right, the power of the taxi industry, this is all local, I think in New York City where I grew up, meant that the city government couldn't do anything. And it took a hack, to shake up the system. Mm-hmm. So, right, there's good and bad. So hacking is a form of innovation. In the book, so think about the way I write. A lot of people write nonfiction, use examples, and they tend to be long. My examples are all short. Like, you get a paragraph.
Too short in many cases.
Oh, no, you get a paragraph that's a long example. I like lots of examples because I think it's much more fun.
Oh, by the way, you were talking about Uber. I forgot to ask. I wanted to ask you about the VC thing, because I thought you were being unfair, saying, the fact that VCs are pouring money into companies like Uber and keeping them alive is a sort of a hack that is damaging the economy.
I didn't say damaging the economy. It's a hack against the market economy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
So the market economy, let's talk about how that works. You have sellers competing for buyers. And the way this is all sold to us, I guess, so we use that word, is that sellers competing for buyers means that sellers improve their wares and keep their prices low. Right? It's a competition among sellers for buyers. And that actually system works. It's a system that works in a market. If you go, a lot of the world is an open market, right? The prices of goods, the quality of goods goes up and down based on supply and demand. And that works. That does keep sellers honest. Competition for buyers. So anything that subverts that is a hack. It might be good or bad, but it's a hack. VC funding is an alternative way to inject money into a seller. So if you are a seller, you can not play that game because you're getting another revenue stream from the top. So you can, like Walmart does, go into a community, undercut everybody local until they go out of business, then raise your prices. Right? Because you're not playing that sellers competing for buyers game. You have another injection of capital. And that's done through the large company. But VCs do the same thing. They allow companies to be unprofitable. Right? Uber has never been profitable. They lose like 40 cents on every dollar. And they will continue to until they hope, right, driverless cars mean they can fire all their workers. That's their only long play. And I guarantee you their investor presentations say that. Fund us, and eventually we win.
Well, wait a minute. I don't understand how that's not beneficial to society.
It might be beneficial. Beneficial is we can argue about, but it's definitely a hack of the market economy.
Yeah, okay.
In the market economy, you lose 47 cents on the dollar, you go out of business soon.
Oh, you'll
because
make it
that's a
up in
lousy
volume.
business. Right? You sell at a loss, make it up in the volume.
Yeah.
Terrible business strategy.
But no, I think for those of us who use Uber and these other companies, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but if they're willing to pour this money down the toilet to keep me able to just jump into a car and get where I want to go, I'll take it. That's good for me. I think overall it's been good for American society.
And so the question is, what happens when they're the monopoly? So monopolies.
Well, no, but you're assuming they become a monopoly.
Right. Well, or duopoly. We have two companies.
Duopoly, right.
So monopolies, definitely a hack. One that we recognized early on, right? That whole, right, sellers competing for buyers fails, so we only have one seller. So we have antitrust law, coming in the 30s, because that is totally a hack. Mm-hmm. Now, when capitalism is invented, nothing could possibly be that big. It really is markets. But so too big to fail?
Yes, right? I thought that was a fascinating
example.
Because are you saying that these companies, like the banks, deliberately have a too big to fail strategy?
Of course they do, because when you're too big to fail, you privatize the gains and socialize the losses.
Was Silicon Valley Bank too big to fail?
Clearly, otherwise we would have let them fail.
No,
right?
no.
Duh.
You can make a good argument that what they were really hacking was the Democratic Party.
Fair.
Exactly.
Fair.
I don't know, because I honestly don't know in their case whether the world would have come to an end if
it wouldn't have, right? But
well, in 2008, the world came pretty darn close. That one was.
So you're encouraging what you want as a steward to. For anybody here, you're allowed to take risks, and the risks have a reward and a downside, and you make the decision. That's great. And you wanna play in traffic? It's fun out there, but you can get run over. You get to decide.
Right.
But if you're too big to fail, you get to play in traffic, you get all the fun, but if you get run over, we all pay.
There you go.
So it incents a much riskier behavior than the system is designed for. Because somebody else will pay if you roll badly.
So it's an extension of the Keynes quote that you use. If you owe the bank $1,000 and you can't pay, you're in trouble. If you owe the bank $100 million and can't pay, the bank's in trouble. If you owe the bank $1 trillion and can't pay, the whole country's in trouble. Exactly.
Or the planet sometimes.
The whole planet's in trouble.
These are global systems.
Right, and that's what's happening, and I think you might be right. But do they actually deliberately design?
If they don't, they should be fired and replaced with a less ethical bank CEO, because that is the obvious strategy. How would you not?
Mm-hmm.
If you know that you are going to be bailed out if you get it wrong, why worry about getting it wrong?
You've got a point. We are approaching the time when we are supposed to start asking people to ask questions, but of course there's nobody here who has any. I mean, we've been so lucid and clear. Everybody knows everything now.
So this was my pandemic book. This is the book I sort of wrote during the pandemic, so it's kind of it has a special place in my heart.
Does that explain the cover? I thought it had a sort of viral,
I don't know. So I'm not in charge of cover design.
Viral look.
It's a good cover. It's it's visually arresting.
Jumps right out at you.
And you had a problem with the title.
No, I'm just not sure. Yeah, I've had more of a problem.
I'm going to give you my theory of book titles.
Okay.
So there's I know there are book people in there. So the only goal of a title is to get you to read the subtitle. That's it. The only goal of the subtitle, only goal, is that you pick up the book, open it up, and read this. And that. Mm-hmm. And that's what sells the book. Right? So your title has to be one that someone says, oh, what's that? So I like evocative titles, descriptive subtitles. Sometimes you can be evocative, descriptive in the same few words. I love those. I've never managed that. But sometimes you see that. So that's what I look for in titles.
Well, I mean, you've come up with some of the greatest titles I've ever
Click here to kill everybody.
Click here to kill
Awesome
everybody.
Title. I know, right?
Data and Goliath. I laugh every time I think about that.
Although, when that book came out, I did interviews. There were people who pronounced it Data and Goliath. Like I missed the joke. Never occurred to me.
That's sad. Okay, who's going to do questions? And we have
we have runners.
Get the mic? Yes.
There are two mics. The mics are back here.
Okay.
The subtitle is How the Powerful Bend Society's Rules and How to Bend Them Back. I'm not going to lie, I'm a little short on how to bend them back.
Yeah, I was about to say.
But you're not allowed to say in a subtitle, things are really bad and we're all screwed forever. Nobody wants to buy that book. You must be a little bit optimistic, even if you're reaching.
No, you leave that part as an exercise for the reader.
But I do better than most. I mean, I've been to you read books where there are 10 chapters of doom and gloom, and then the final chapter is here's how to fix it, and it's only like mealy. I at least try to do a third of how to fix it.
Thank you. So my question relates to the end of the book, actually. It makes it pretty clear we need more white hat hackers. We need hackers that are going to be developing whatever the latest technologies are and using them for better or to at least counteract the negative stuff out there. And you've said that children are great hackers. I have a child who's going to be an amazing litigator or hacker of some kind.
And you could already tell. And
You
what?
could
They were
tell
like
when she was
5?
3. She's 10 now, but the evidence was there early.
See?
How do we raise white hat hackers? How do we raise that hacker mind without them preferably ending up, in jail? How do we encourage that mindset when, there's an educational challenge, there's a lot of societal, and then there's just sort of we're supposed to be good people, and you want that questioning, you want that challenging, you don't want them in jail.
So first of all, not a parent, so feel free to ignore everything I say. I think we need to foster the mindset. I worry about kids being too insulated by rules and not getting the time to test them, to push them, to cheat. And I know as a kid I broke the rules all the time, and that's how you practice. So it's a skill you have to allow. And I think society frowns upon it more. We want more rule followers, and we have give kids less opportunity. So I've always been I'm forgetting her name. Her book is Free Range Kids. Mm-hmm. You may try to bring that back, but these days you have a free range kid. Social services comes down on you because society just doesn't think that's okay anymore.
Yeah, but in things like whether the public library or on the internet, you have a lot more room for free range, if you will. And like my own kid, I don't know that he has any particular desire to be a hacker, but he's very proud of the hacks he's discovered in Roblox, where he goes into Roblox games and he and his friends, it's a social activity for them. Keep in mind, he and his friends sit there and figure out every conceivable way to rig Bloxburg or any of the other
Which is
games.
fantastic.
I know.
I like this.
I know, and it's wonderful, and I encourage them.
Okay, excellent.
Absolutely. I say, yeah, well, you figured out another way to cheat. Good, go for it, kid.
Because you've been doing this in computers for
Well, I don't.
way too long.
Yeah, but
like both of us.
Exactly, but I think of that as a good thing. But at the same time, we take them to church and Sunday school and all that kind of stuff because we are teaching them how to know right from wrong, how to know ethics. I don't think there's a necessary contradiction there.
Definitely not.
I don't think so at all.
No.
So, yeah, turn them loose. Let them rip.
There's a hand up. There's a mic up there.
Yes. So real quick, I wanted to make one comment, which is one of the things that's wrong with Uber developing a self-driving car is how many people rely on ride-sharing for their income, and then the massive layoff crisis that would generate. Yeah. But to an actual question, this is something I often think about. You talk about hacking mindset, and I think there's a difference between when you actually are using the rules in a way they're not intended, abusing them, when you're just like using your power in brute force, for instance, like Rockefeller in the 20s or 10s, like sending the militia to kill coal miners. That's not hacking the system.
No, that's breaking the rules.
Yeah, that's
Agreed.
breaking the rule. But he did it anyway, and he got.
Oh yeah,
away
but
with
lots of.
Rockefeller or Carnegie? I can't remember.
I think both of them.
It all starts to blur.
Anyway,
None
the
of
thing
them are good
is,
people.
I've often think. Do you think? And I haven't read your book yet, but so maybe you address it. But we are actually kind of in the oldest modern country in the world. So we have like the oldest operating system of this type of government, and has all these quirks, like electoral colleges and filibustering and all of these things. And
All of which are right. Filibustering totally a hack.
yeah.
Yes.
But
Very good
all of
point.
them.
Invented in 30 BCE, by the way. Like a Roman senator, he realized that the rules say all business must be conducted by sundown. He looks around and says, if I never stop talking, we can't do anything.
But
Sorry, go.
is it salvageable this way, or does it have to be like?
So it's a really good question. And I talk in the book about systems that get hacked to destruction. And so hacking is a parasitical strategy,
Yes.
right? You're taking advantage of a system at the expense of others. If too many people do the hack, the system collapses.
Yes.
Right? So not paying your taxes is a hack. If no one pays their taxes, there's no government. Right? So the hack requires the system to exist in order to function. So what happens is what we're postulating here. So these are hacks against democracy, and filibuster and money in politics I talk about. And the weird is must-pass legislations and other delaying tactics, lots of ways.
I'd be careful about the filibustering thing because it's a hack against democracy that's almost deliberate because of the understanding that you don't want total democracy.
No, but it's not. That's a backfill. It was totally a hack. When the
I think you're right.
When the Roman Senate devised the rules of like, we want to get home for dinner, people, they didn't think, and also that could be used to make sure nothing ever happens. Right? That's not what they thought.
But what worries me, though, and I think you're really hitting on, I think almost everything I said I'm in complete agreement with, because this is what's creeping me out about exactly what is happening in America. I think we are all, in a sense, becoming engaged in this massive effort to hack every conceivable part of the American constitutional order because we no longer trust each other. And every branch of American society, every political, the right, the left, everybody is basically saying, instead of there are rules, let us follow them, they're all trying to find ways to game the rules.
So your question is an interesting one. I don't know the answer, right?
No.
Can the system evolve? Now, unfortunately, we don't tend to change our political systems radically without violence. Right? Historically, there are very few instances where we've done it without violence.
Well, not only
The
that,
odds aren't good.
we shouldn't be able to. I mean, that's the point of it. A political system should change relatively slowly.
So, but it's really has not changed at the speed of. So we have now a mismatch between tech and policy. I am now thinking about and writing about this very question.
Oh, really?
I don't have a good answer.
No,
I
never
think
mind.
we would definitely have this misalignment of our power as a species and the structures that govern us as a species.
Uh-oh. All right, now you talk about AI. How is that going to AI?
Okay, that's my
Let's go.
question.
Let's
All right,
go.
there's your question. Go.
Thank you so much, Hayata and Bruce, to make it so fun. I really love this session. And I was wondering, when did you finish the book? and you were able to cover precisely on ChatGPT and AI.
So I talk about
That's going to be the next book.
Yeah, ChatGPT I'm not that interested in terms of, I mean, yes, it's producing human language, but humans can do that. So let's talk about tax loopholes, right? Peter Thiel's loophole, the double Dutch Irish sandwich. This is a tax loophole that involves the tax laws of the United States, Netherlands, Ireland, and an offshore tax haven. 4 jurisdictions' laws coming together basically create a loophole that allowed Google and Apple to not pay any tax. Human beings discovered that, right? That is a tax loophole that takes creativity. And AI can be trained to find tax loopholes.
Like
Right.
the cricket example.
Interesting.
Like the cricket example.
Like the cricket example.
Like the AI figuring out the way to hit a cricket ball so people couldn't win the game.
So what happens when you train an AI on the US tax code or the world's tax codes?
That's what you'd want to do all at once.
100%, right? I mean, if Goldman Sachs is doing this right now, they're dumb. Guarantee this, they're working on this. Right? Again, this is not going to be done for your benefit. This is going to be done for the benefit of Goldman Sachs.
Oh, wait, but if they do it and use it, we'll know that they've done it
I know.
and use it, and then
You can have your own Apple multinational organization and not pay tax. It doesn't work that
No,
way.
what I'm
right?
saying
You
is-
don't have the trucks to move the aluminum around. These are not things available
that
to
wasn't
us.
where I was going. Where I was going is, if that kind of thing happens, there's no way people aren't going to change the tax code to prevent it.
That'd be great. So,
No way.
so this is the question. So, AI is now trained on the tax code. So this is still science fiction. It's not stupid
No, but
science
that's
fiction.
really one of the best applications I've heard yet. I've never thought about
Right.
that. It's a great idea.
So the question is, how many loopholes they find? 1, 10, 1,000, 10,000? Like will they figure out you should register your ship in Panama? You should incorporate in Delaware. I mean, these are all the well-worn hacks that are now part of normal. How many new things will they discover? And then, we have a very human system of patching. Right, so, the carried interest tax loophole, we haven't patched yet. There was another one that was in the Trump tax break law, and that law was handwritten, and there was a lot of mess in it. But there was a mistake. Everyone knows it's a mistake that taxed military families for death benefits. Like never intended, super embarrassing. It took like 3 years to fix, and everybody knew this was a mistake. So this can really destroy our systems by increasing the speed and rate of hacks, right? Financial hacks. So I think that's sort of the bad part of AI. The good part of AI is the defense can do that too.
Exactly. That's what I was going to ask you.
Right.
Why couldn't
They could.
Oh, yeah.
So you could have, there's a new tax law proposed, and someone shoves it into the AI, and it produces, here are all the hacks. Doesn't mean they get fixed, because there's a lot of lobbying, but they become public and part of the debate. Just like we are now using AI to find vulnerabilities in software. They're not that good at it. They're getting better. But that stuff's going to be built into the compilers, right? That stuff's going to be used by software developers to clean out all the vulnerabilities. So it's going to be interesting to watch. I think AI is going to change things, and my last few chapters are on AI and how it changes things. It's not clear. It should be any part of AI when there's an attacker-defender arms race, who wins. The arms race will ratchet quicker, but who comes on top is unclear. And basically, it's the rule for anything you're reading about large language models or AI, anything you read, just assume it's true for today. Things are happening so fast.
Oh, the 6-month pause. What do you think?
Well, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be long enough. It is. It is odd that we have optimized our society for the near-term financial benefit of a bunch of tech billionaires. Seems like a dumb way to run society. Like who thought of who elected them? So I like it when we decide what tech's role in society should be, rather than having it thrust upon us. I think a 6-month pause would do us good. It wouldn't be nearly enough. This is going to change everything. I never talked about the massive unemployment from drivers. Future of work is going to be a complete mess. And we all thought it was like the service workers. It's the attorneys. Hey, turns out a lot of what they do is kind of dumb and easily replicable by the world's most sophisticated parrot.
Well, wait a minute, we've had radiology AI for a while.
Radiology, right?
But I haven't heard anything about radiologists losing their jobs.
So there are fewer of them. So that was two stages. The first was the radiology X-rays were sent to India,
Right.
where the labor was much cheaper, and now AIs are much better. And here's something where like an AI is better than humans at detecting cancer in X-rays. I'm all for it. But when you sort of creep into an AI that will optimize traffic lights in the city, that's fine.
Yep.
Do I want an AI to set tax policy? Probably not. I mean, like the AI has determined that we should invade Russia tomorrow.
Bingo.
Can't tell you why, it's a black box, but it really, really thinks you should invade Russia tomorrow.
Bless your heart.
What do
we
we-
have a chapter in there about the explainability problem.
That's right.
Got to talk about that.
So how, can we get an AI to explain its reasoning? This turns out to be hard. What we know about explanations is that they are really, so we humans use explanations a lot. They are actually not explanations. They are really justifications. We don't think and then decide, we decide and then think. And explanations are a shorthand by which I can convey to you my mental state. Right? They are optimized to the way humans make decisions. They are not optimized for AI at all. AIs do not process in terms of human understandable explanations. The explanation might be, the billion data points said this, and it's irreducible from that. There's like nothing else.
But this is the very reason why right now, today, there are AIs being used to do things like decide whether or not you get out of jail.
And they're super racist.
Well, I don't know if I go that far, but there is evidence that they are racially biased.
Because it's garbage in, garbage out.
There are AIs that decide whether or not you get welfare benefits.
Yep.
There are AIs that decide whether or not you keep custody of your children. And I do not think it makes any sense to be putting AIs in those positions unless they can tell you why
100%.
they're doing what they're doing.
100%.
And we're already deploying them, and I don't think that makes any sense.
And so the problem is, I think he's right, 100%. Problem is, we're forcing an AI to produce a human understandable explanation is an additional constraint that seems to affect accuracy. Now, we might say as society, I would rather have a less accurate but understandable decision, because if it's, just because it's more accurate doesn't mean it's not biased, doesn't mean, a lot of ways to define fairness.
Yeah.
That, and what is fair is actually a philosophical question. It is not a mathematical question.
That's right.
There are mutual contradictory definitions of fairness. Fairness of opportunity, fairness of outcome, fairness of entry. There's a bunch of different ways that we as humans use the word fair. And we use them differently in different situations, but that's a human conversation. That is a values discussion. That is not a optimization. Once we know what kind of fairness we want, what kind of fairness do we want here at Harvard? Do we want, let's just take, one criteria, whether it's, gender or race or class. Do we want equal proportions graduating? Equal proportions admission? Do we want the same criteria for admission for everybody? Do we change the criteria because of other reasons? These are not questions an AI can answer. They are fundamentally questions about what we humans value and what we want to do. Once we know what it is, you can turn the AI on and say, run the numbers.
That's a really great point. So we figure out what our values are, and then we tell the AI.
And it turns out figuring out our values is really hard.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So and there's work done. There's how do we train AI on what human values are? And there are two ways we're trying to do this. One is to have the AI to deliberately tell the AI what our values are, like good luck. And the other is have the AI observe our values by watching us behave, which is even worse.
We're all gonna die.
So yeah, this is super hard. All right,
Absolutely.
this has been actually, yeah.
Yeah, okay, a couple things. One is just there's a certain amount of hype here, and I think, so for example, 40 years ago, electronic health records were supposed to change medicine. They haven't.
They haven't.
All they do is just make billing a little better. That's just a side.
But that changes medicine for the people who have the money.
And not so much. But my question is, coming back to sort of your tax examples, you said that some people can hack taxes, but it relies on everybody else following the rules.
Right.
On the other hand, you're saying all the kids should learn taxes, everybody should sort of bend the rules, but society relies on most people following the rules sort of religiously. So I'm wondering if you're sort of conflating hacking with creativity and innovation.
So I think hacking is a form of creativity. So that's a conflation.
Innovation.
Right.
That's not bending the rules. Innovation is just making things better, right?
But it's also bending the rules. I mean, we can talk about Uber being innovative.
Sure.
Right? Uber, we might not like it, but Uber is innovative. It is an innovative way, and it uses properties of our phones and credit card. I mean, it's a really clever innovation that wasn't possible before the iPhone. Right? And I mean, the way the incentives line up. I mean, taxi driving used to be one of the most dangerous professions in the country, and it's not, because you, the passenger, the driver, are both under surveillance constantly, and the competition for star rankings aligns the incentives. You are incented to be a good passenger because you're going to get downranked. That didn't happen with a taxi. Taxi drivers incented to be a good driver because they want a 5-star rating. It's a really clever way of aligning incentives. So, I mean, it did. I think it did a lot of damage, but it also did a lot of good. So I do think hacking is creative. They're going to make us get off stage soon.
Works for me.
We have time for one more question.
All right.
I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I have represented a number of hackers.
Just the man I want to see. Never mind. Sorry.
And I've kept every one of them out of prison. It's after all, a federal offense. Serious enough hacks are investigated by
Get his
the
phone number.
FBI. My question is, what do you think when, especially young student hackers, when they get prosecuted, what do you think an appropriate sentence is? I can ask you the question because the reason I kept all of my clients out of prison was they pleaded guilty when they were caught, and they agreed to teach the FBI how to deal with hacking, because they knew so much more than the FBI did about how to detect it and how to stop it. And my question is, how would you suggest that young people be treated by the system when they're caught?
Do we put them in jail? Do we hire them? Do we put them in jail? Do we hire them? I don't know. So, I think rule breaking is part of growing up, and I think you need to treat underage people as underage people. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to test the rules, and destroying their futures feels like a mistake. So I tend to be lenient. I mean, you need to know where the rules are, and now we have much more creative outlets for hacking. It isn't that you have to hack the phone company. And there are hacker spaces. There's a whole culture, but experimentation, taking a software product and taking it apart and putting it back together and figuring out how to do weird things. Like the kid who changed their Zoom name to connecting ... I would not penalize them. That was super awesome. But all right, now we know. Stop doing that.
Now, did any of your clients do anything like take down a municipal water system or anything like that?
No, nothing that's
Well, that's best,
that's what I
right?
mean, yeah.
But what do you do? Some of it is this is the modern equivalent of cow tipping, or that. Right? But this is the power problem, right? Our tech is so powerful that you could take out a municipal water system. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, we're not really ready for that kind of power in the hands of individuals. That's a bigger problem than the book. Yeah. So agility and governance, there's a lot of things to really think about. Moving into the latter part of, I guess, the latter of the first half of this. What do we call these decades coming up? We could call it the end time, but again, I told you that does not sell books.
No. I just wanted to say briefly that we talked about this. I was talking before this whole thing got started, and I just want to say, with all the gloom and doom hovering in the air, I just insist on reminding people that we are living in a time of miracles. For all our complaints and hand-wringing, the very fact that we're sitting around talking about this amazing technology that has empowered so many people around the world, like my relatives in Congo, who can reach out and talk to us anytime they want to, something that would have been unimaginable 10 years ago. Now they do it without even thinking about it. I live in an age of miracles, and so however worried we get about this, let's be thankful, because these are good problems to have. That's all I wanted to say.
That's fair. All right, so the plan is, I believe, that there's a reception out across the hall and make a right. You'll see our faces on a screen. That's how you know it's the right place. You will pass another reception with better food. The proper thing to do is not eat their food. Just saying.
Okay. Thanks a lot, you guys.
Thank you both. Books are for sale in the lobby. They're also available in the library where Bruce will sign them. Thank you, everyone.